Welcome to Foodwise. Hi, I'm Joey. In today's video, we'll be discussing the process of food spoilage and how to know when a food may no longer be safe to eat. These videos were created thanks to the City of Ottawa's Community Environmental Project program. Today, we're really gearing down from the broader scale of food waste to talking about a much more individualized approach. How can we as households really begin to reduce food waste? We saw that about half of food waste occurs at the household level, and the causes are things like overbuying, improper storage, that result in spoilage. In this video, we'll begin by just getting to the basics of things. Why does food spoil? What are the causes, and what's the science behind it? You may know that oxygen loves to bind with many different things, and our food is no exception. Unfortunately, with that oxidation comes the browning of foods, like when you slice an apple and it starts to turn brown. Another process that breaks our food down is enzymatic activity. Now, enzymes are great because they are actually what help to break down larger molecules into smaller, more digestible pieces. For example, in fruit, enzymes break bigger chains of sugar into smaller chains as the fruit ripens. This process not only makes these foods taste better, but also makes it easier for our bodies to break them down and get the nutrients we need. However, as enzymes continue their process, these foods will continue to ripen until we have foods that are overripe, soft, and discolored. Next comes bacterial growth. Generally, we try to avoid bacterial growth on our food as much as possible, though there are some exceptions for good bacteria, like in the fermentation process. However, knowing the facts about bacteria, like which situations and environments they thrive in, can help us to minimize bacterial growth in our food. But what about when food has already started to go bad? How do we know when food is just past its prime and still safe to eat, or if it's spoiled and unsafe to consume? One of the ways that we can identify this is using the dates on the food label. Now, this can be a point of confusion for people because they assume that a best before date is the same thing as an expiry date. A food with a best before date is referring to quality, not safety. For example, bread after its best before date might become hard and dry, and because of this texture change, the quality of the food changes. But unless there's mold or bacteria growing on it, it's still safe to eat. There are also ways we can get around these textural changes, like using dry bread to make croutons or breadcrumbs, which allow us to still use the bread in an enjoyable way even after it's past its best before date. However, it is important to know that some foods are an exception. This includes things like meal replacement drinks, infant formula, and nutritional supplements. These foods have an expiry date instead of a best before date and should not be consumed after they have expired. Unlike in the case of bread, foods with an expiry date do not just change visually or texturally, but nutritionally. After they have expired, the nutritional values in these foods will begin to break down, and eating them at this point does not have the nutritional value that is promised, and it may even have adverse effects for your health. What I really want to highlight when we talk about foods that are past their prime or starting to spoil is that we're using our senses. We're checking with our sight, smell, and taste while still sticking to our personal comfort level. If it's past the best before date, that doesn't mean we immediately have to toss it. We can evaluate it first. But if you see something that's past its best before date, or maybe even before that point, and you're questioning it, go with your gut. This same process can be done with canned goods. But what would we look for if an item is not in a clear container? The first thing to check is the lid. Noticing a bulged or raised lid indicates that there may be bacteria growing and producing a gas, which is making the lid bulge upwards. If liquid is seeping out of home canned jars after they've been sealed, that could be because once again bacteria is growing inside and forcing the gas upward, which causes leakage. We should also be on the lookout for things such as active bubbling. And if we have a clear container in which somebody canned something themselves, we might see fizzing or bubbling inside, even if we didn't shake or move the jar. This is a sign that bacteria is forming and it is no longer safe to eat. Another fairly clear sign is just seeing a layer of mold or film on top. Finally, something as simple as a smell test is another really good indicator of if a canned good has spoiled. Now that you know some tips about assessing whether something is still safe to consume, consider options for using it up or extending the life of the food by providing it to somebody else who can use it up. If it turns out that you have food that is no longer safe to consume, remember our food waste pyramid and consider composting as a last resort. The City of Ottawa has had a green bin program for many years. This would go a long way to keeping food from ending up in our landfill. I hope today's video on food spoilage has been informative. Feel free to leave any thoughts or questions in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video where we will be discussing food planning, grocery shopping, and meal prepping. Thank you so much for learning about food waste reduction with me today. Bye for now.